Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight. World is going a little crazy, said Donald Trump at a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron. Both politicians have also met with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. More on that in a moment, but first let's take a look at the latest headlines. Ukraine receives another batch of F-16s. Kyiv thanks Denmark and criticizes other allies. 10th day of protests in Georgia. Police brutality and crackdown on opposition continue. For the first time, the far-right AfD party has put forward its own candidate for its German chancellor. US President-elect Donald Trump and other world leaders descended on Paris on Saturday to celebrate the reopening of the iconic Notre Dame Cathedral. The event serves also as a perfect opportunity to discuss the current situation in Ukraine, as Donald Trump met the French and Ukrainian presidents. Our chief political correspondent Aaron Damon reports from Paris.
Here in the City of Love, the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral is certainly a romantic story of revival. Just 5 years ago, the iconic spire behind me was toppling down in flames. Now it is illuminated in light. This city is in lockdown today. Security is extremely tight, and that's because powerful leaders from all around the world are here. President-elect Donald Trump, Polish President Andrzej Duda, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. In fact, Mr. Trump, he met with French President Emmanuel Macron just a little bit earlier today. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
It's an honor to be here. We had a good time together, and we had a lot of success, really great success working together on defense and offense too. And it certainly seems like the world is going a little crazy right now. Yeah. And we'll be talking about that. Thank you very much for being here.
That wasn't the end of the diplomatic merry-go-round. He also met with Macron and President Zelenskyy. Remember, Trump was the guy who promised to end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours. It all comes as people flood to see tonight's events on the big screen. There's been a real buzz all afternoon here in Paris. We spoke to a couple of those people. Here's what they told us.
I think Notre Dame gathers the whole world, and I think the whole world needs.
It's mostly really excitement and also happiness to know that after 5 years of promise, it's happening.
For Macron, of course, it's an opportunity to steer a little bit away from some of his domestic problems and do something that's a good news story. And they've managed to refurbish it in record time, 5 years, I think it is. So from his point of view, it's a win today, even if it's with the backdrop of stormy weather.
Despite the cold, despite the rain, this is historic for a city that watched on in horror as the cathedral burned. But tonight, a part of Paris is returning to its people. In Paris, for TVP World, I'm Aaron Darman.
Paris may be the capital of the world today, but France itself is gripped in a deepening crisis. In a shocking political upheaval, French Prime Minister Michel Barnier was ousted in a no-confidence vote. This shake-up not only poses immediate challenges for President Emmanuel Macron's administration, but also threatens to alter the trajectory of French politics and its ties to Europe. Sonia Gatavish reports.
Despite lengthy negotiations, the Barnier government failed to agree on the 2025 budget, which led both left and right-wing parties to push for a no-confidence vote. This created pressure for President Emmanuel Macron, with some believing he should resign.
There's time pressure, and this time pressure is on Macron, because as a president, he must appoint a new prime minister and a new government. And there's a time pressure because there's no budget for 2025. And if no agreement, no budget law is passed by the parliament, there would be a shutdown.
Some say Macron's resignation would be the best chance for French far-right leader Marine Le Pen to run for president, as she is currently facing a criminal court procedure for the abuse of EU funds, with a verdict expected in March 2025. Prosecutors requested a 5-year ban from public office, which would bar her from running for president in 2027, but Macron is unlikely to step down.
He explicitly said that he will not step down, like in his address on Thursday evening. Like he very explicitly said that like he was going to carry out like his mandate until its end in 2027.
Although it seems unlikely that Le Pen could become president before 2027, given Macron's commitment to stay in office, one cannot help but wonder what a Le Pen presidency might look like, even just as a thought experiment.
It would certainly weaken further the geopolitical weight of Europe, because she has taken very anti-European positions in the past. It is not likely that she would exit from the European Union, but ruling jointly in Brussels would become much more difficult.
In 2014, Le Pen's far-right party National Rally obtained a €9.4 million loan from a Russian financial institution to keep itself afloat, which prompted Le Pen's pro-Russian stances in the past. Despite this, she appears to be more reserved in her support towards Russia these days than in her 2017 presidential campaign.
She exhibited these ties during the presidential campaign by delivering the press a picture of her shaking hands with like Vladimir Putin. Today, she no longer does that, like obviously for like the simple fact that Russia invaded Ukraine, and that like it has become much more untenable for Western politicians to show themselves as aligned with Russia.
Due to constitutional requirements, new parliamentary elections cannot be held before July 2025, as a year must pass since the last election. Given the current political climate, it is not unlikely that the parliamentary election will be held at the earliest possible time, that being July 2025.
Germany's far-right AfD party has named Alice Weidel as its candidate in the country's snap federal election due on February 23rd. Her main rivals will be incumbent Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Conservative leader Friedrich Merz in a vote marked by economic downturn. Piotr Miszczuk has all the details.
Alice Weidel, a Chinese-speaking lesbian economist, is touted as a chancellor hopeful by her far-right populist grouping Alternative for Germany. Upon receiving her nomination, she painted a doom-laden picture of Germany, saying the country is going through one of its worst crises and is heavily affected by the war in Ukraine.
Our country is no longer what it used to be. We were a country without war, without being involved in war. We had 70 years of peace.
But there is zero chance for AfD to enter the future government, said political analyst Piotr Andrzejewski, adding that the party's pro-Russian narrative is becoming more popular in the eastern part of the country.
Yeah, they speak their pieces needed as quickly as possible, which means giving up on Ukraine, to stop supporting Ukraine. This is how they understand peace.
On his recent visit to Kiev, Chancellor Scholz announced another aid package for Ukraine. His main rival, Friedrich Merz, of the Poles leading CDU, has also put the Ukraine war at the center of his political campaign. Once a stable three-party government is now a two-party minority government, after German Chancellor Scholz last month ousted then Finance Minister and leader of coalition partner Free Democratic Party Christian Lindner, plunging the country into a political crisis.
The problem of the former ruling coalition stems from the economy. Germany is about to enter an economical recession for the second year in a row. And this, combined with a very difficult budgetary situation, led to a political crisis.
According to the latest survey, nearly half of the Germans are concerned with the economic situation in their country, a country with the largest economy in Europe.
Germany is not just one of the 27 EU members. Germany represents quarter of the EU's GDP, over 27% of the manufacturing output of the total EU.
The two-party minority coalition led by Olaf Scholz is now expected to lose a confidence vote on January the 15th. That, in turn, will lead to a snap election in late February, a date that has been tentatively agreed by all parties.
The presidential race is kicking off for good in Poland. One of the ruling coalition candidates, Szymon Hołownia, launched his pre-campaign in Gdańsk earlier today and presented his staff. The largest ruling coalition party, the Civic Coalition, has also held its first convention with their candidate, Rafał Trzaskowski. The election is due to take place next year. Kazimierz Bysiak reports.
Rafał Trzaskowski and Szymon Hołownia. These two presidential hopefuls are both representing the ruling coalition in Poland. But make no mistake, these are two distinct candidates.
They will be probably not fighting against each other, and before the first round, and the most probably Rafał Trzaskowski will be the one who will get to the second round of election.
Rafał Trzaskowski hails from the Civic Coalition, the largest party in the center-liberal governing coalition. Now serving his second term as the mayor of Warsaw, Trzaskowski is leading early opinion polls. On Saturday, he presented his first election promises ahead of the 2025 vote.
When we are talking about the most important matters, cheap energy is definitely up there. This I can guarantee for you, cheap energy.
While Trzaskowski has been present in Polish politics for more than a decade, Szymon Hołownia is relatively new to the game. He used to be a popular TV host who rather unexpectedly ran for president in 2020, ending up third behind Rafał Trzaskowski and the incumbent head of state, Andrzej Duda. Currently serving as the parliament speaker, Hołownia is the founder and leader of the Poland 2050 party.
Times have changed. We should now forget about all the policies of the past 20 years, when it was relatively peaceful. It's no longer peaceful in our region.
For both candidates, a win in next year's presidential election is crucial for the efficiency of the ruling coalition. Current President Andrzej Duda hails from the conservative opposition party Law and Justice.
The Polish political system, which needs the president to sign the laws which are passed in the Polish parliament. It would be a disaster in some way for the coalition when in case of having Karol Nawrocki, so the opposing candidate from the Law and Justice Party, as the future president of Poland.
The candidate backed by the Law and Justice Party is the president of the Historical Institute of National Remembrance.
I've been called a neo-Nazi and a fascist by my political opponents, but I'm still waiting to be called a Russian spy. I wonder how they will do that, though, since I've toppled dozens of Soviet-era monuments all across Poland.
Nawrocki has the full support of the conservative leader Jarosław Kaczyński, who also on Saturday made his debut on the popular social media platform X with the help of his party colleagues. From a cordial greeting, Kaczyński quickly moved on to a series of criticisms towards his political opponents.
Fear makes cowards of us all and comes from a wolf in sheep's clothing. He loves people, especially Catholics. I'm touched. He's trying to disguise himself as a Law and Justice type of a guy, but a radical left type of a person hides behind the mask.
The political discourse is becoming more and more heated, and we are still a few months away from the election, which will take place in May.
The second round of presidential elections in Romania, which was to be held this Sunday, has been called off. The country's constitutional court has ruled that the outcome of the first round of vote was influenced by Russia. This decision deepens the political crisis in Romania. And our correspondent, Paweł Trzaskowski, is in Bucharest right now. Hello, Paweł. Good evening. So, what are the latest developments?
Well, police raided houses in Romania today linked with voting irregularities. Local media reported at least 16 people have been arrested so far on the basis of voting corruption, money laundering and computer fraud. And these actions follow the Constitutional Court's decision made on Friday to invalidate the first round of presidential elections because of malign Russian interference into the electoral process. It is reported that at least 85,000 cyber attacks were conducted during the first round of presidential campaign, of presidential elections, and this means that the presidential race will have to start from scratch. I spoke on the matter today with Ambassador Adrian Zuckerman, former US ambassador to Romania, and he told me that lessons learned from this failed attempt to elect the new president of Romania should translate to a more democratic and transparent process in the future. I'd like you to have a listen to a fragment of my interview with him.
The only difference in the future round of elections will be that this massive Russian-sponsored disinformation campaign, hybrid attack, will have been neutralized so that the people of Romania can understand, hear, and digest the reality and the truth about all of the candidates for president.
The presidential candidate who got the most attention is Călin Georgescu, who surprisingly won the first round of presidential elections because of an orchestrated TikTok campaign, so say Romanian authorities. Today, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, spoke with the current president of Romania, Klaus Iohannis, and she assured him that the Commission will keep working to ensure that online platforms will obey the Digital Services Act regarding elections in Europe. Back to you.
That was Paweł Trzaskowski reporting from Bucharest. Thank you very much, Paweł. Thousands of pro-European demonstrators gather every day in the streets of Georgian cities to protest against a government they accuse of abandoning its bid to join the European Union. Today, Georgians came out to demonstrate for the 10th day in a row. Our correspondent Don Arleth reports from Tbilisi.
Tensions on the rise once again here in the capital of Georgia as police last night brutally broke down on protesters here in front of the Parliament building and along the avenue. Police made dozens of more arrests last night, some of which we saw were very arbitrary. The Coalition for Change has released a balance sheet, if you will, about information concerning the protesters arrested since November 28th. Now, around 400 people were arrested, of which more than 350 were detained on administrative and 20 others on criminal charges. More than 300 persons fell victim to violence and ill treatment, such as the torture or inhumane treatment. The arrested individuals include 7 foreign nationals. 1 Belgian journalist was arrested last night. More than 80 demonstrators needed to be hospitalized. Defense attorneys had to wait hours before they would learn the whereabouts of their clients. Judges have been making decisions exclusively on the basis of witness statements of police officers and police officers only. The defense evidence is disregarded. Now, the European Union's representation here in Tbilisi also said today that visa-free travel for Georgians could be jeopardized by the actions of the government, currently the Georgian Dream. We see right now on the streets here peaceful protests, but with so many arrests taking place just over the last few days since these protests broke out, we are definitely going to see more arrests and more brutal crackdown by the police on protesters here who largely want to see a path to the European Union and not a path backwards to Russia. Reporting from Tbilisi, Don Arleth, TVP World.
Denmark has delivered a second batch of F-16s to Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelenskyy thanked Copenhagen for its support, but did not spare words of criticism from other allied countries. Our correspondent, Oskar Terzi, is in Kiev with more details.
The second batch of Danish F-16s promised to Ukraine have been delivered, according to a statement by President Volodymyr Zelenskyy put out on Telegram on Saturday, saying the first batch of planes provided by the Danes are already shooting down Russian missiles and rescuing our people and our infrastructure. Now, there was a bit of pointed criticism at the end of the message, saying if all partners were so determined, it would have been possible to make Russian terror impossible. So a bit of criticism from Zelenskyy there to his Western partners. Kyiv's particularly aggrieved about partial aid packages that have not been delivered despite being publicly promised. Ukraine's really hoping those deliveries come in as they move into 2025, uncertain of what the political climate is going to be, particularly in Washington. But Kyiv has been hoping for these F-16s for some time now, so they will be relieved they are finally on the ground. It's Oz Chatterjee reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
The grand reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris gathered the heads of state from around the world. Among them, the US President-elect Donald Trump. American leader visits Europe at a very uncertain moment as the future of Ukraine hangs in balance, and both France and Germany are rocked by political crises. And to discuss the issue, we're joined by Andrzej Byrt, former Polish ambassador to France and Germany. Good evening, Mr. Ambassador.
Good evening.
So just before the meeting with Emmanuel Macron, Donald Trump stated that, quote, "We had a good time together and we had a lot of success, really great success working together on defense and offense too." And he also added, quote, "And it certainly seems like the world is going a little crazy right now, and we'll be talking just about that." Now, what do you think Donald Trump exactly had on his mind?
Well, he simply confirmed the fact that, as a matter of fact, for some years now, the entire world has been, as a matter of fact, in certain series of convulsions. Political one, big wave of populism has spread all around very many continents, and Donald Trump has also his, to a certain extent, his say in this process. But the words he just pronounced while being in Paris, I think, can be treated hopefully as a good signal for good cooperation, at least at the very beginning, between the United States under the Donald Trump's rule and France. Both countries have had a number of different incidents during his first presidency, but it also has got, and in the past, got very symbolic acts of good cooperation. Hopefully, the visit of Trump during the new opening of the restored Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris is probably a good signal that this symbolic act of reconstruction and the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral can play such a positive role also for new French-American relations after the oath being presented by President Trump on 20th of January 2025.
Nevertheless, I'm sure that President Macron does not forget Donald Trump's remarks during the presidential campaign when he was openly mocking the French president. But let's now talk about one more leader. Volodymyr Zelenskyy also came to Paris today, and he also met with the US president-elect and the French president. Now, given the recent visit of Zelenskyy's representatives to Washington, how close, in your opinion, is the peace deal?
Well, the ideas of peace in Ukraine, as a result of the future change of power in Washington, was outlined by the future president as kind of a forced stoppage of war activities on the Ukrainian territories. But as a matter of fact, as far as the commentaries of the allies and advisors of President Trump are concerned, he meant probably the fact that the Ukrainians should resign from their ambitions to join NATO, plus probably to stop bilateral war-like activities, Russians against Ukrainians, on today's line of the front, which would be very detrimental to the interests of Ukraine. Hopefully, I believe that maybe when President Trump is much closer to its to taking its new duties as the President of the United States, he will look more realistically on the situation in Ukraine, and hopefully, as a result of today's debate between the two leaders, President Trump will more understand the situation which exists in Ukraine. We have to hope this, but what would happen? We have simply to wait for the final decisions being taken by the president when he takes the office in Washington.
About France's internal affairs now, France is facing a major political crisis after Prime Minister Michel Barnier has been given a vote of no confidence. Now, could this current political crisis lead to snap presidential elections in France as well? Because, as a matter of fact, now we have a sort of a deadlock in France.
Yes. Well, I don't think so. President Macron is a player who know how to play with time and on time. He had decided to carry on his bilateral debates with all political parties in France, and the last turn will take place on Monday. And probably on Monday he will announce the name of the future new prime minister, which probably will not be from the left side of the French political scene, but rather as a kind of a combination of Republicans with some representatives of the left side. But the major problem we are facing now, and France particularly is facing, is exactly the approval of the budget, because the time flows out and it should have been done till the end of this year. And if not, the French president probably will have to call back a special legal trick which exists in the French constitution, which means to prolong the date of approval of the budget till mid-February. But these things will be knowing on Monday, when the president probably will present his candidate as a result of his already arranged and still to be arranged on Monday debates with representatives of different parties.
So we'll still have to wait a little for this Monday decision. But the political crisis is also engulfing Germany, and both in France and Germany, the far right is rising in popularity. Now, given that Donald Trump is soon to be the next US president, can both AfD and Le Pen's party in France count on some sort of support from Donald Trump's administration?
No, I don't think so. I think that the U.S. administration, also under Donald Trump, will play with those parties which, in the history of bilateral relations between Germany and the United States, were very solid and stable, which means with probably Christian Democrats, which for very many times had been leading the West German politics. And whether Democrats or Republicans, they've got excellent contacts with these with CDU and CSU governments of the Federal Republic of Germany. And as today's all polls indicate, probably the party which will finish the elections most likely to happen in February 2025 will be Christian Democrats. So I think that these are likely partners for Donald Trump, and probably with them he'll be trying to link and develop hopefully good relations between America of Donald Trump and Federal Republic of Germany.
Well, the recent history teaches us that elections in Europe are highly unpredictable. Andrzej Byrt, former Polish ambassador to France and Germany, was our guest tonight. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for much more here on TVP World.